Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to listen to the KSAND Advocacy Team's panel discussion on making your passion your profession, leading the way for advancement in all practice areas. My name is Garrett Wagner. I'm your Advocacy Team Public Policy Co-Coordinator, and I'll be hosting today's panel. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to the panelists as well as our moderator for this session. Our first panelist is Marty Yadrick. He currently serves as past chair of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Foundation. He was Academy president in 2008 to 2009 and has held many other leadership roles in the Academy, including treasurer, delegate, media spokesperson, chair of ANPAC, chair of the Nutrition Informatics Committee, and chair of the Sports, Cardiovascular, and Wellness Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group. Marty received his Bachelor of Science from Colorado State University. He completed his dietetic internship and Master of Science degree from the University of Kansas Medical Center. He has an MBA from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and a Master of Biomedical Informatics from Oregon Health and Science University. So welcome, Marty Yadrick. All right, next we have with us Adam Lax. He is a business coach, speaker, best-selling author, and registered dietitian for over 28 years. He uses his love of food and clinical expertise to make him the fun back into food dietitian. Adam has a Bachelor's of Science in Dietetics and Nutrition from Florida International University. He's the past president of the South Florida Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. He holds certifications in weight management for adults and children from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, as well as hypnosis to assist in transforming his clients. Adam currently is president of RD4U Incorporated. In private practice as well, he coaches nutrition entrepreneurs in business with the six-figure Nutripreneur system to show how to earn a six-figure plus and sustainable income program in private practice. At the end of the day, Adam's mantra is to leave his nutritional blueprint to the planet for all that seek health, vitality, and prosperity. Adam Lax, thanks again for joining us today. And we have some of our own KSAND people on this call as well. Patti Dollarhide is a registered dietitian who works with the Beef Cattle Institute at Kansas State University and is a third-generation farmer and rancher. Her professional work has been in various segments of the agriculture and food service industry, including veterinary medicine, healthcare operations, sales, distribution, academia, and farming. A degree in dietetics has provided a solid foundation for making multiple job moves throughout her rewarding career. Patti, thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Nice to be here.
And to round out our panel today is Kristi Thaete. She serves as the Director of Nutrition Services at Children's Mercy, Kansas City, where she provides leadership and oversight to more than 50 registered dietitians on staff, as well as all milk preparation and formula preparation activities within the hospital. She continues to provide patient care to children with cleft lips and palates while serving in the Cleft and Craniofacial Clinic. Kristi received a Bachelor of Science degree from Kansas State University in 2002 and a Master's of Science degree from the University of Kansas Medical Center in 2007, both in dietetics. She has been a nutrition support clinician since 2006. She's a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, Clinical Nutrition Manager Dietetics Practice Group, and Pediatric Dietetics Practice Group as well. She serves on the Pediatric Malnutrition Committee and is a content editor for the Pediatric Nutrition Care Manual. Kristi has also been the newsletter editor for KSAND for the past 4 years. So welcome, Kristi Thaete. I'd also like to introduce our moderator as well, Dr. Kevin Sauer. He is a professor in the Department of Food, Nutrition, Dietetics, and Health at Kansas State University and co-director of the National Center for Food Safety Research and Child Nutrition Programs. He specializes in administrative dietetics and has previous experience in healthcare, food and nutrition services, school nutrition, and university dining. Sauer is an accomplished educator and researcher, receiving the K-State Presidential Award for Excellence in Teaching, the Dolly Scholar Award for Excellence in Student Development, and the Mary Ruth Bedford Distinguished Faculty Award. He received the 2015 Distinguished Dietitian of the Year Award and the 2019 Mentoring Award from the Kansas Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. A fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, Sauer's extensive service to the Academy includes past chair of the Commission on Dietetic Registration and past chair of CDR's examination panel. He is the current director at large on the board of directors and has provided leadership on numerous Academy committees and programs. Sauer will serve as the Academy's president in 2021 to 2022. So welcome, Dr. Sauer.
Garrett, thank you for that great introduction. And I think it's only fitting that we also introduce you a bit more, Garrett. Garrett is one of our great students here at Kansas State University, and he's been very flexible and has handled the adversity with the national pandemic very well, along with his peers. Probably one of the biggest challenges is spending up to 6 hours a day with me on Zoom doing simulations. But we really appreciate he and his class members and classmates, and all the flexibility. You're going to come out of this just fine. And especially, we appreciate you serving on the Kansas Academy Board in the role that you are. I think you're off to a great start. So Garrett, thank you for those introductions. And also thank you to the Kansas Academy for allowing me to mentor, or I guess not mentor, but moderate this session. I feel like I'm in really special company here with these great colleagues. And again, the title, I think, says it all: making passion your profession, leading the way for advancement in all practice areas. And what great leaders and practitioners do we have on this panel today? Obviously, it would have been nice if we had all been together in person in Wichita, Kansas a few weeks ago, but that's not possible. And through the power of technology, I'm glad that we can gather here today to talk about this very important topic that we call advocacy. Today's session, in terms of a brief outline, it's fairly categorical, if you will. We're first going to ask our panelists to talk about highlighting the value of the RD credential. And then we'll shift gears and go into advancing the profession, talk a little bit about non-traditional careers, and then some more specifics about how to make your profession your passion, and then some more on advocacy and advancement, and then we'll close things out here in about 90 minutes. So once again, thank you to everyone. I just want to underscore the broader National Academy's efforts in advocacy. In case you don't know, the Academy's policy efforts and advocacy efforts do support the Academy's mission and vision. And the Academy's strategic plan, of course, contains 3 focus areas that really underscore the policy and advocacy framework. These include prevention and well-being, healthcare and health systems, and now more importantly than ever, with COVID-19, advocacy is targeting its focus on food security, access to MNT via telehealth, protection and safety of the credentials, and even support for small business owner support and relief. So again, the Academy has kept this on the forefront and maintains it as a foundation to the future direction. So with that said, I think we should proceed on and hear from our great panelists here. In terms of highlighting the value of RDs, we'll go with Marty and then we'll follow up with Patti. But Marty, how has being a dietitian helped you stand out in your career?
Well, I guess everyone, especially now, is interested in health and how they can be healthy and stay healthy. And so being a registered dietitian nutritionist is a way that I can share with people on how they can become more healthy or stay healthy and have a healthier lifestyle that incorporates, exercise, fitness, and the whole healthy regimen. I think that's really the best way that I've been able to, as people are interested in it or ask me questions or they know what I do for a living, it's been a way that I can help advance our profession just by sharing what we have to offer as dietitians.
Thank you. Patti, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm glad you asked me this question in 2020 as opposed to when I became a dietitian, because I would say for a while there I was questioning that question myself. What is the value of an RD? It seemed like the doctors didn't want to listen to me, and customers would. It was difficult to do some of the things we did back in the day in patient care as far as feeling validated. But as time grew and people, like Marty said, people are interested in nutrition, they start to see that connection. Right now, nutrition is a nice umbrella that covers a lot of different things that we can do, which is why we have such variety on this panel. But being a dietitian, I believe, has given me some credibility, if nothing else, in the market. And they see that you have those credentials and that you have an association like the Dietetic Association, made up of so many members, to rely on, that I do believe it does elevate your opportunities.
And Patti, we'll get to this later, but you're in a rather unique role with the Beef Cattle Institute. Do you find yourself having to explain what the credentials mean or what they stand for with some of your colleagues?
Well, they respect them. They don't know what they mean, maybe, but I think some people think I have a master's degree, which I don't. So sometimes it's almost been a substitute for that. But we do explain to them, who the association is and that we do have a college education, which I think is important.
Thank you for that. I'm going to switch gears to Adam and Kristi, and we'll start with Kristi here. And the question really pertains to compensation. As we know, when we use the word value and value proposition, there's almost always a financial underpinning to it. So Kristi, how can you share with us how RDs can advocate for adequate compensation, sometimes when it seems like there's little room for negotiation?
Well, I think the thing that I would say most is certainly give yourself permission to ask. You know, if you start the conversation, if you're afraid to start the conversation, that's only going to hold you back. So finding out in whatever your organization or whatever you're working on, just the ability to ask decision makers about compensation and kind of discussing compensation is a great place. I always think it just never hurts to ask. You'll never know if you don't ask. I also think that, you know, coming from the clinical background, the more data you have in terms of the things that you're doing or to support the things that you're doing and whatever those things might be, whatever those projects might be, the more data that you have to support that is helpful. Also coming again from like clinical setting, showing value downstream is something that we don't always think about in terms of clinical nutrition. So if I'm thinking about you know, compensation from the terms of my bottom line in terms of the nutrition department, that I may or may not be able to show good value to decision makers in a healthcare setting. But when I can partner with physicians in their medical practice to show the value downstream that might be coming in, then that gives me a lot more background in terms of what I can support in terms of you know, in terms of compensation for dietitians.
Outstanding, thank you. Adam, any perspectives on the compensation?
Since I've been on both sides of the spectrum, from the corporate end and the private end, there's two ways of learning how to ask for money. And that's actually one of the platforms I speak about is our RDs and DTRs asking for the monies that they're worth, directly proportional to their self-worth. Yes, it's not a scientifically based practice, but it comes to the interview process of giving value to back to the company and justifying what we we're beyond the experts, we are the authorities when it comes to that. So from the corporate end, really it speaks for your achievements and really how are you going to affect your company's bottom line? How are you going to bring value to the client base? From the private sector, I'm seeing it more and more where dietitians are going out and asking for different fee structures than they're used to. And I find that it goes back to my personal upbringing of my values of money. And I think that's not taught to us really in academia, but maybe it could be included as a topic of conversation in the leadership process.
That's outstanding advice, and I really resonated with the factual basis behind some of that. And Kristi, when you said taking numbers or providing evidence in terms of where the value might be, I think is so important. And Adam, I agree with you. I think these skills and knowing how to use that data really belongs in the classroom so we can outpace this a little bit and get ahead of things. I know our graduates coming out in May are wondering how much they should and can negotiate salaries with the current pandemic going on. And you're still valuable, you're still going to be credentialed, and you need to show that value. Now's not the time to backpedal, if you will, on you know, being less than. I might bring this up again in one of the other categories, we'll see, but I also want to point out that the Academy does publish the Compensation and Benefits Survey, and that's a fairly major study that the Academy invests in along with the Commission. And so many practitioners do not know that that exists or that it does not pertain to them. And I think if you read between the lines in that report, there are all types of factual ways to show value. And, you know, if you can't sleep at night, that report gets down into the minute levels of geography and where people work and what they do. But here is a free benefit to members, that report that, you know, was invested in, and we should use it. And, you know, the good news is this year we saw an increase for both RDNs and NDTRs that almost outpaced you know, economic growth by 2. So it was pretty great to see some of those results come through that way. So I think what you've all said is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and Kevin,
I have that slide, Kevin, on my presentation. So I make it known that the information's out there. Let's just be an educated consumer and professional.
Exactly. Marty, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Kevin, because so many people are not aware that that is available to them. And I think any HR department in any type of setting would want to say that they have competitive salaries. And one way to show them what a competitive salary would be for their area of the country and the practice area is to provide them with that survey. So.
Excellent advice. And we try to arm our graduates with that information too, not the whole report, of course, but once you get to that negotiation phase, if you can say, you know, a report from our very own academy suggests that this is the range we should be talking from, or the related benefits, what a great, powerful tool to have with you so that it's not anecdotal or just based on artificial information. So once again, Marty, you probably have been as well. I've been on a few stages where, you know, the question comes in, when is the academy going to do something about our salaries? You know, that's kind of an inside out and an outside in type of thing, but there are actual laws that prevent some of that from happening. We can't price fix salaries across the country without getting sued. But the academy does have a link too for negotiation and a career toolbox. And once again, making people aware of that, I think, is the job of all of us as credentialed practitioners. So great discussion there. Moving on to advancing the profession. Patti, I'll start with you. How can dietitians translate their value and skills to decision makers? I guess, how can we influence decision makers with our skill set?
I think we need to continue to look for commonality. So if we're trying to show our skills, we have to step back and say, what do they need? You know, what do they need and how can we match what we have to offer with what they need? So then they can take that and say, okay, can I get return on this investment? Because again, maybe those are things we didn't talk about a lot in school when I was there, but at the end of the day, there has to be some type of benefit for both sides. It's just not a benevolent thing that we need to make sure everyone eats right. There also has to be some return and some reason for that. So I think that, you know, we do have to be upfront about what it is we can offer. And sometimes maybe the position we're talking about, maybe we don't have the skills that are a match. And so also being able to realize that depending on what the opportunity is.
Excellent input. Kristi, you work at a major medical center and it's got to be complicated at times with lots of stakeholders. How might you address this question about demonstrating value and skills to decision makers? And if possible, could you even elaborate on what we mean by decision makers in your environment?
Yeah, so the number one thing I would do is define who your decision makers are and identify who those people are. So for a medical institution, a children's hospital, our decision makers are going to be our clinical leaders, as well as our operational leaders, and then our overall leaders, so our CEO as well. So meeting with them on a regular basis, making that part of my regular work. I meet with our decision makers regularly a lot. And so that I know what's going into all the decisions that they're making. You know, right now in the pandemic, some of the decisions that they're making are swift and they're quick. But because I already have a relationship with those decision makers, then I'm included in some of that communication where if I didn't have that relationship, might have a missed opportunity. But I always encourage dietitians to meet with the decision makers so that you know firsthand exactly what goes into their decisions, and making sure even before you meet with the decision maker, so for me, that's going to be our leaders, that I know what the mission and vision of the hospital is. So you have to know what the mission and vision is so that you can translate your value to make sure it lines up with the mission. And so for dietitians in the clinical setting, for me, efficiency is really where we have an opportunity to show our value. We offer the medical team a perspective that no other position does. And so we're able to help the doctors and the nurses and the medical teams be efficient in their decisions by the expertise that dietitians bring to the table. And that's huge value because then those physicians can go on to see other patients and do other things, and we can help with that.
Great. Kristi, Garrett mentioned that you graduated in 2002 from Kansas State University. Did you ever think you would be involved in this level of decision making just a few years later?
Well, Management and leadership fell into my lap really, really shortly. In fact, it was 4 months after I graduated was my first leadership position. And I had no idea that was going to be my path, nor would I have told you that was a path I was looking for. So it came to me, and it's just something that's always hung around in all of the different positions that I've had over the years. So obviously it was the direction I was meant to be on. So I certainly just all take it in and try to do the best I can in these kind of swift decisions that have to be made.
That's excellent. I hear great things about your management style. So it's funny how many times practitioners will say it kind of fell into their lap, that they weren't really looking for it. I think that says a lot about the skill set that is already evident with our credentials, that leaders say, you know, I think dietitians are good at complexity and systems thinking. So let's put them in a position with responsibility. Patti, you were going to say something, I believe.
Well, I just would like to add to what Kristi said. I think she brought some really good points. As being a food service operator and director for a long time, sometimes there's a rift between that clinical piece and the food service management side. And I think the whole idea is we have so many different people we have to talk to. So knowing your audience is a very good part. But, you know, if the only thing that the food service director knows is that the dietitian is bringing up problems, you know, about why isn't food done this way, and you know how this is so terrible, you know, walking in with solutions along with it, or at least showing that partnership, I think is really important. And you know, I've been in positions where I felt like dietitians were really like the most important thing in a certain area of the hospital, and then I felt like sometimes we weren't working together. So
Excellent.
You know, at the end of the day, it is definitely a team.
Thank you. Adam, you know, you're in a little bit of an interesting position and area of practice, if you will. So how do you define kind of decision makers, or what kind of tone does decision making take, I guess, in your area?
Well, I'm kind of a solopreneur in a way, but, you know, so I am all the stakeholders combined. So when it comes to adding value to my new clients, and I'm actually kind of hedging with this pandemic, you know, I was asked, how do you prevent something, you know, how do you keep your business afloat during a situation like this? And I don't think we have any answer to that, but bringing value in the future to our clients is, hey, listen, we're still around. We still need to prevent disease. We still need to bring value to the table. There's no other profession like us. And really, we have to be bold enough to say that, because we have the evidence behind it. So really, when we have to start rattling the pots and pans at 7 p.m. for our healthcare workers. So why can't we do it for our RDs? So add a little excitement.
Yeah, I've always said that there's kind of a distinct fork in the road when it comes to being unique. Being unique can be a really good thing, and being unique can be a really bad thing. And I feel very fortunate to be part of a profession where being unique is a very special thing. So I think you're exactly right there. My friend Marty, we're going to stay in this category of advancing the profession, but you're the director of Informatics for Computrition. And I know you were very instrumental with the newly formed Informatics Dietetic Practice Group. And you've presented on our campus about informatics. So the question is, how do dietitians play a role with leveraging technology in their area of practice or making decisions as well?
Well, it's so much easier to answer now than 10 years ago, because, or even 20 years ago when I first started at my job with the company I'm working for. There were dietitians that did not know how to use a computer mouse, I swear to God. And now it's something that everybody uses in every aspect of their practice. I think one of the most valuable pieces of it that affects all of our areas is how easy it is to find the information that we need, how easy it is to store data so that it could be mined for research later. I think there's so many areas right now where technology makes our job easier so that we can focus on things like if direct patient contact, if we're in a clinical job, or something that we may not have had the time to do when we were doing things by hand in the old days. First thing that comes to my mind.
Excellent. It's definitely a growing field and going to keep growing. Garrett, I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit here. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there could be an age or generational gap between you and the rest of us, but I think that's good. Where do you see the role of social media headed as you enter practice and you head to graduate school, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that there is to be said about that. I think one of the things that you've actually said to us during some of our lectures is that dietitians love to talk to each other, but a lot of times that discourse doesn't actually reach the people that we're helping. And so really as practitioners and as dietitians, social media is one of the best tools that we can use to reach clients, to reach the public, and to reach people who our expertise is useful for. So.
Yeah, excellent. And I'm glad you've been listening in class. I'll be sure to add 2 million extra points to your grade here in a few weeks. So thank you, Garrett. But yeah, I've always firmly believed, unless we get the end user to talk about us, that we really haven't marketed. And I think most of us on the panel have probably stumbled into social media one way or another. And your generation has literally grown up with it. So it'll be interesting to see how that morphs and changes and becomes part of what we might call technology or technology of practice or something like that. So, okay, moving on to non-traditional careers. Again, a great panel to help talk about that. I'll start with Kristi and Patti. So Kristi first. Many RDs are what we might call multi-passionate or multitaskers even. How do we leverage that skill to create a career that we love?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do as an individual person is determine what your passions and your vision are. Take time to invest in yourself and invest in what that means. And I think that many of us don't, at least I certainly didn't when I first started my career. I didn't sit back and think, okay, what am I interested in? I graduated and I looked for a position, I looked for a job. And that kind of led my career path a little bit, but I never, it was many years actually before I stepped back and say, okay, what am I passionate about? What am I interested in? The other thing I would say is once you establish what your own personal mission and vision is, or missions, if there's more than one, choosing activities that then set you on that path and being selective about the activities that you choose. Some folks don't get involved at all. Some folks get involved in anything that comes their way. And so really giving yourself permission to determine what your path is and then choosing your activities accordingly. I think that helps you leverage a career that you love. When I was first graduating, there weren't a lot of alternative jobs. There were a lot of clinical jobs, a lot of food service jobs, but some of these jobs that I see some of our graduates now or some of our interns go into or some of the clinical dietitians might move on to are much different than they were. And I think giving yourself permission to look in that area can help you on your way for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And our educational processes don't always seemingly directly relate us to those or guide us towards those types of positions. But at the end of the day, there's still a common skill set and a core skill set that's pretty transferable to others. And getting our students and even the employers to understand that is what's really important, I think. So, Patti, any thoughts on this particular question?
I would just like to add, I think Kristi did a good job of laying the foundation, but just adding, hang around with the people that you want to be like. If you see, one of the things when I was in the hospital, I had a lot of good friends who were pharmacists and some of the different nurses on the different units. And so that really made my career in the hospital a lot more interesting when we could identify. But then as I branched out after that, I was in big organizations. I was like, wow, well, what areas are really interesting to me. And so trying to make a point to get to know them and ask questions. I mean, best question asker in the whole world, which was Dr. Pence for so many years at K-State. But, I learned from him. He asked a lot of questions. And you'd be surprised what people will tell you. So yeah. I think that is two of the careers that I have had within the last 10 years didn't have a job description. They really didn't know why they hired me either. And so, again, just trying to ask those questions and find out what is it that, what are the synergies?
It is interesting, isn't it, Patti, that, are we our job title when we describe ourselves, or are we a registered dietitian? I recall my daughter coming home once and saying, my friends and I were talking about what it is that you are. And she's like, are you a teacher, or are you a chef, or are you a dietitian? And I thought, I don't know. Am I a professor or am I a registered dietitian? And, how you introduce that and share that with someone, I think can open up those why type questions that you were referring to with Mr. Pence. And so I try to lead with, I'm a registered dietitian who happens to be whatever job title that might be. And it seems to bring in more questions then. But Garrett, you're headed to grad school soon. Well, are you going to be a graduate student, or are you going to be a dietitian? Which do you think you're going to be?
I don't see any reason why I can't be both.
I agree.
Talking about this, and listening to Kristi and Patti talk, I mean, I really love the idea of using your credential and using your background as a springboard into whatever you choose to do. So, if you go into policy, use that evidence-based background. If you go into management, same deal. So I love that it's so flexible, and really you can do whatever you want with it. So you don't have to be confined to, clinical or management or, wherever. So.
Excellent. Great segue. Adam and Marty, I'm coming your way now. And so Marty, I'll start with you. What recommendations do you have for students who are getting ready to graduate or get into supervised practice about some of these non-standard settings or atypical career paths?
Well, I think Kristi said it really well a minute ago about finding something that you really get passionate about. If you have a job where you're always saying, thank God it's Friday, then maybe, and you get depressed on Sunday because the next day is Monday, maybe that's not where you need to belong. So the other thing that I would tell students, though, is there's coursework that you really enjoy studying that you may not actually enjoy doing, and vice versa. I personally loved clinical nutrition, studying clinical nutrition. For me as a career, that wasn't something that I thought was something I wanted to continue focusing on for my whole career. And I sort of poo-pooed food service management, thinking, oh, I'm a clinical person, I don't need to know that food service stuff. And it's hurt me in my career. It's not hurt me, but I've been a disadvantage because I didn't put as much attention into that area that I was studying. So I think you'll find the area that makes you passionate both in what you like to study and what you like to actually do.
Excellent. Adam, on that same note, again, any advice for students looking for opportunities out of what we might call the standard areas? And I'll just have you continue on. What if people in general are just looking for career change? Any advice there?
With all jest, be careful what you wish for because it comes true. Like Marty, on the opposite side of the spectrum, I started off in food service and I never wanted to be a clinical dietitian, and I was at the bedside for 15 years. And now, being a business owner and a business coach, I tell my students, and I precept for 4 programs, is you will probably not end up where you first started. And Marty affirmed that as well, is I've finally found what I love to do, why I get up in the morning, and it goes beyond the passion and how ebullient and excited I get of being able to either connect that dietitian from the transition from going from a job to owning a own business, or even helping my professional patients getting from point A to point B. So what do I tell my students? I guess my biggest question for my students is, how many years do I got to do clinical before I can go own my own private practice? And really, I said this at a keynote address at one of the ceremonies, and I said, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go against the grain and say, listen, I don't want to take your dreams away. If you want to start your business tomorrow after you graduate, go right ahead. Because I don't want to take that away, because yes, we give best advice based on our experiences as professionals and as educators. But as an entrepreneur, we are bigger risk takers than the newer student out there. So as a preceptor and a mentor, I kind of hold their hand and say, listen, pick 3 and narrow it down to 1 and put the energy toward it with the plan and go for it.
Excellent. Thank you. We can't have advocacy. We can't even have the discussion without talking about networking. So I think I'll circle around to everyone with this question. And Kristi, I'll start with you. Suggestions you have for networking, not only within, but externally to, I guess, your organization or the profession, because as we know, it just won't work without networking. So we know there's FNCE, but what else? What else do you do?
Well, I think, kind of bringing it down to your local level or regional, state, whatever level. For me, I sit on both sides of the state, actually. So I live in Kansas, which is why I am part of KSAND. And I'm sitting right now in Missouri. So my office is in Missouri, and then I also have sites in Kansas as well. So I am involved in the Kansas side of things, but I also know that there's a Missouri side of things. So I stay in touch with the leaders in MOAND as well, even though I'm not a member there. So it's really about taking a chance. And honestly, some of the things I've done is literally just pick up the phone. I know when I first took this position as the director, I wanted to get to know some of the other directors in the city. And so I picked up the phone. I called over to the director at KU. I called over to the director at St. Luke's, and I just had a few minutes phone call with them. I told them my name, what I was doing, why I was calling them. And then a few times I've met for lunch with a couple of folks. So I tried to kind of bring it down to the local level as well. And then in terms of pediatrics, there aren't pediatric sites here that many close. So I really have to network with other pediatric sites. So I have gone to some of the other, like the CNM symposium. I've also attended some CEU presentations at another children's hospital so that I could get to know those folks. And I've been on phone calls with other directors. So it's really just taking a chance. You really just have to start with, hi, my name is, and here's why I'm calling you. And it's just about taking a chance and putting yourself out there. And for me, it's not easy. I'm not naturally super outgoing, and it's harder for me to meet people. So when I go to any session, whether it's fancy or otherwise, I set a goal of meeting 5 people I don't know. Because if I don't set that goal, I'm not going to do it. And I can easily kind of retract into just either talking to the few people I do know or just kind of standing and hesitating. So I have to really make it a point to do it.
We hear that pretty often. It's not necessarily a naturally occurring thing that we enjoy doing, but it's so important. And Patti, I don't even know why I'm asking you the question about networking, because for years, you've picked up the phone and said, hey, Kevin, can we visit? And when we visit, we start talking about all these other people that we have in common. But how have you found your way around, networking? Because I think you've been in some positions that probably happened because of your network.
Well, I think, like Kristi say, it's sometimes it is exhausting almost, but you have to set a goal and decide, what you want to do. But I think one thing is some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. And I actually am more of an introvert side. And as I look at how some people have networked with me, like, if something was in a magazine, they would cut the clipping out and send it to me, in a handwritten note, and how powerful that is. And I try to continue those kinds of practices where, some of the things I love to write notes, those are things that are easy to do. Again, associations help you network, but when you're in a mentioned fancy, you're at this table of 10 people, what do you talk about? Finding one or two unique things about you that people will kind of remember you by. I remember I was on some board one time and I talked about turkey hunting, and I think that's all they probably ever remembered, but that was something that some of the other guys had done also. So most of the roles I've had have been in more male dominated professions. And so again, trying to find a couple of things that you can share with people easily and that you feel comfortable talking about that might be memorable to them. Behind me today, this is actually a picture this is the river on my farm, and so trying to give people some kind of connection with you.
Yeah, those connections, when we kind of form that network through a story, it can help a great deal and form kind of a unique bond with people. So Marty, your position is almost the primary DNA is about networking. So is that naturally occurring to you, or is that something you had to almost learn?
Oh, well, I, like other people on the panel, I'm a total introvert. It's really hard for me. The most anxiety producing experience for me is to be sitting at a table with a bunch of people that I don't know, like at a wedding reception or at a Academy House of Delegates meeting. But just getting involved in some activity, like a volunteer dietetic association activity for your region or for KSAND or a DPG or member interest group in the academy, that's the way to get started. And you meet that group of people and you do your work, you do a good job, and you get invited to do another job. So that's kind of, for me personally, that's what's really enriched my career so much, is taking that first position back in the 1980s when my boss at Research Medical Center in Kansas City said, you really need to get involved. That's how you can create that network. And when I first moved to LA in '93, when I lived in LA, I didn't have a job at all, but it was because of networking that I had through different volunteer activities in the academy that I was made aware of a person who I went to interview with, and I had a job a week later. So it's good for you personally, and it's good for everyone that you interact with.
Isn't it interesting that we're almost 100% on this call today? I too don't gravitate to groups or wanting to do all that. Once I'm there, it becomes more comfortable. You know, my students are usually shocked by that. And I'm like, well, I can produce a reasonably exciting lecture. That doesn't mean I love doing that sometimes as well. So you do have to kind of find a level of comfort with it. Adam, I suspect that networking is critical for you as well, and probably what got you to the Kansas Academy Conference this year.
I call myself an extrovert. I love to have fun. If I'm not having fun in my business, I have no business having fun. Yes, I was a late bloomer when it came to getting involved with the Academy. Actually, I got involved, you know, I've been a dietitian for many 24 hours, and I got involved later on, like in 2008 when Marty was president. And I actually met Marty in the hallway, and I thanked him for his service. He probably doesn't even remember, but that's okay. But my wife tells me I can go up to anybody and say, hey. And I think that's an attribute and something that could be taught to people is really like getting over the uncomfortableness of going up to someone and say, hey, hi, I'm a fellow registered dietitian. My name's Adam Lax. So, you know, it's really just getting that icebreaker and going, because I actually have some of my clients, dietitians, go to networking events just to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, taking that risk and that discomfort. We always say our coordinated program doesn't stand for comfort program, but it can be difficult, and you know, for good reason. Dietitians had to work very hard to get to the end point in terms of getting the credential, and so sometimes I think that limits risk. That, you know, I'm not going to take risk if it holds me back, but now we're saying that risk can be important as well. So great input there. And I don't know how many people in my career have said Marty Yadrick was like the deal breaker when I met him. And so Marty, you're like celebrity status to a lot of people. So look at all that networking and influence that you've had.
No way. All right, I'm leaving now. Bye.
No, you're not. We know where to find you. So, okay, Patti, you have another thought?
I just had one other thought, and that's it. You know, one thing, when we ask somebody's opinion, it's really pretty flattering, you know. And so sometimes when I've heard a really good speaker, or I've been in an audience, you know, I never in the past, but they always put their email address up there, usually at the end of the presentation. And it's kind of fun to reach out to those people and meet that way also. But people, at first it was kind of scary, but I thought, well, if you want somebody's opinion, that's kind of a validation that you think they know something.
Yeah, exactly. Very good point. This next category is, you know, how to make our passion our profession. I think we have evidence of that already with our speakers. Garrett, I'm going to put you on the spot again. I didn't let you know this was coming, but there's this question here: have you experienced imposter syndrome? I don't know if we need to have that as a question, because all of us have experienced imposter syndrome. But Garrett, for our audience, I know that this is a very sensitive topic with students, because you've worked so hard to get to where you're at. But what does imposter syndrome mean to you? How would you define that?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is basically feeling like you have absolutely no grounds for being where you are. I know I really felt that when I entered my clinical facility earlier this semester. I was like, what the heck am I doing here? Like, let me in, right? Like, but some of the most comforting things that people have told me about imposter syndrome actually just come from the fact that most other people have imposter syndrome. So, you know, people saying like, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here either. You know, how did I get here? And fake it till you make it. And honestly, at the end of the day, you just got to keep doing it, and you get more comfortable doing it, and kind of grin and bear it. It takes time to learn in any sort of situation, any sort of environment. So you just got to stick with it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I think that helps segue to Kristi here. Kristi, I'm sure you've dealt with this. You've probably felt like you had to fake it a few times to make your position stand out a little bit. And then you've probably witnessed others encroach in our area with an imposter kind of theory behind it. So any thoughts on this?
Yes, and I think I think that this type of thing happens all the time. You know, I might be called to a meeting with, and this has happened this year, where I'm called to a meeting with executives, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I here? And I just, like Garrett said, you sort of fake it till you make it. But the thing I would also offer is, if you are invited to something where you don't feel like you belong, listen very, very closely to what is happening around you, because no doubt you're going to learn something. And then when you're asked to complete a task or project or whatever that might be, do it the very best you can. Be great at it. Be reliable. Do what you say you're going to do, and do it the very best that you can. And whether it's figuratively or actually, sit up straight and pretend like you belong there. And like I said, listen really closely, because no doubt you're going to learn something.
Outstanding. Marty, by no means are you an imposter, but I'll bet you spent a few years having to talk programming talk almost, or do people assume that you knew programming from a technology viewpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I had to take, for the informatics masters, I actually had to take programming classes and database classes, and it's kind of like, you know, you get A's in the first half of the course and you get C's in the second half of the course. So I've always felt like an imposter in that area. But I think just being honest about what you know and what you don't know, and not trying to fake it. If you don't know it, it's all right to say, I don't know that answer, but let me find out for you. And focus on the areas that you're best at, that you enjoy the most, and continue trying to learn about areas that interest you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Patti, you've been in positions where you're probably the dietitian and they're not familiar with the role of a dietitian. So how does this imposter syndrome resonate with you?
You say I have to listen to what they're saying, like you say, and go back and kind of rethink how to approach that, because everybody believes they're right. And so, you know, they really are just looking for validation from you. And so I think it really is, it's really touchy sometimes on how you approach that. So I guess just not being so defensive up front. And again, sometimes that's hard, but kind of taking a step back and saying, now, why are they, what are they thinking about this? And maybe it's in a different conversation that you have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've always had a good an enjoyable time talking to students about, you know, you will forever probably be explaining what you are as a dietitian, and even our own family members still wonder. And there's always some, almost being an imposter in your family so much as the expert. I was listening to my dad recently, who was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And he was reciting to me all these websites and these foods he should be eating. I'm like, you know, Dad, I've kind of studied this before. And, you know, he still doesn't quite believe me. So I'm an imposter to my own family sometimes. So it's interesting. Adam, this imposter syndrome, I can't wait to hear your viewpoint. And if you'd like to continue on, you know, the next question is about life balance, work-life balance. So if you want to bridge those together, and then I'll come back to some others on the whole theory of burnout.
Sure, and I'm just going to build on what Patti said, is kind of listening to people. We can absorb it, we can nod our head and say, right? We have a choice. It's all about choosing to direct that person or just accepting what they've said and move on. In the beginning of my career, I probably felt more of the imposter syndrome, of course, going through you know, those years of experience, but it's not against the law to have your own opinion. So as long as we follow our evidence-based practices and my morals and my values, that's how I can kind of say in the next conversation or next topic of conversation of explaining what they've inquired about. Work-life balance is really an intricate part of my success of being who I am today. When I worked for corporate America, you know, everything was segmented, you know, time management, you know, everything was lined out for me. Running your own business and having time management with life, having kids. I'm a grandparent as well. I love to travel. I'm very active. So really, I can't be Adam Lax today without doing the self-care, the leadership scheduling, and just making sure I check off my boxes every single day, because I strive for 100%. I'm hitting the line at about 90%, especially with the pandemic. Work-life balance, I didn't panic. And I think we should all kind of take that as a mantra, is don't panic, remain calm, those royalty shirts that people wear. And this too shall pass, and we will get through this. But planning your day firsthand, like it's business as usual, is so intricate for me for this guy.
Great insight. Marty, when we're under normal conditions, I see your daily flight schedule sometimes on Facebook. How have you managed not sizzling and burning out in your career?
Wow. I love to travel, but I must say that I have really enjoyed the simplicity that not traveling has brought to my life. And for a person who's a dietitian who's a lousy cook, I've actually been cooking and baking more than I've ever done in my whole life. So that has been a really, for me, selfishly, with all due deference to Kristi and all those on the front lines in the hospital, it's been a great period for me to kind of, I don't know how to explain it, just to see different aspects of my life that I was missing out because of all the travel.
Yeah, I suspect maybe a lot of people personally and professionally might reset a little bit and reboot as their organizations review. Although some people, are still going in, especially our heroes in healthcare, are having to go in every day and might come out of this more sizzled and burned out than when we went into it.
True.
So, Kristi, any advice on the infamous burnout term?
Well, I think for me, and I would encourage anyone to do this, I have to define for myself what's most important in that day, week, month, or what have you. So, in terms of being work-life balance, I can't guarantee my family that I walk out of the office every day at 4 p.m. and I'm at home by 4:15. That's just not the path. But I can guarantee them that I will prioritize some things that are really important to me, and I'm not going to miss those things for my family. And so I'm honest with my family, and I'm honest with my work about what is important to me, and then I hold that true. I hold tight to that. If there's a home event that I need to be at, I'm going to be at that. And I'm honest with my team about that. And the same thing, if there's something at the hospital, Joint Commission's coming, or it's COVID-19, we have to plan, I have to be at the hospital for that. I try to be as honest as possible. And I think it might've been Adam who said, taking that time to, in normal circumstances, like taking time off, investing in yourself, doing those things that you need to do on a regular basis is really important. And if I could go back and tell my younger self, I would tell my younger self to take the PTO. Don't save it. Don't lose it. Take it. It's important. The hospital will go on without you. And the same as now, with my team, we are still encouraging people to take PTO. I know you can't travel to these far off places, but you do need to rest and reset and relax. And so we are encouraging people to take that time as well. So normal time and now.
Excellent. Patti?
I would just say I've had different jobs that I've had better work-life balance, and sometimes it's really not so good. And to Marty's point, when you're traveling, I don't think you realize how much stress it is to make sure you catch all those flights and get everything scheduled and get all your expense reports turned in, and all those kinds of things. I don't think you even realize it until you take a pause. So I would just say that sometimes you just have to deal with it and make decisions. You have to decide what you're willing to do and then make those changes. And I'm happy in academia, I can tell you that. So for now, anyway, it's a different style.
Garrett, I'm going to come over to you for a moment. There's nothing worse than when a student graduates and they already feel burned out. So what are some strategies you've used to try to minimize that to some extent, perhaps?
I think it's kind of a combination of what everybody else has been saying. You have to take time to care for yourself and do the things that make you happy. Now, I'm a student. I don't even know what the term PTO means in my world, but it's recognizing what makes me feel good and what makes me feel bad. Things that make me feel bad are, worrying about things that I don't have any control over, worrying about a certain exam that I have to take here in a couple months to be a dietitian. It doesn't do any good to worry about those things. But what does do me good And what does help with stress is things like exercise, reading, taking dedicated time for the things that I enjoy so that I can wake up the next morning and think, wow, like I'm still energized about this. I'm still jazzed about this, and I'm ready to take on the day.
Excellent. And you can all see why we've enjoyed having Garrett as a student, because he teaches us just as much as we've ever even attempted to teach him. So that's great advice. So let's switch over to the last few questions for the panel, if you will. I thought that this question was interesting, Marty, and I'll ask everyone probably something along the same lines, if you don't mind. But in terms of inclusion, it's been well known for many years that our profession perhaps maybe isn't as diverse as it could be. And, in one form, as a male, we're a part of diversity as well. But it really is in the eye of the beholder, and diversity takes on many shapes and sizes in terms of what a profession might be seeking. But what are some steps we can take to promote inclusion throughout the profession? What are some things that you've seen over the years?
Well, I think that, that's a tough one. The Academy has a lot of efforts that they're underway with to increase diversity and inclusion. There's a diversity committee that's been going on for years. There's diversity grants, promotion grants for programs like internships in colleges for the programs that they're doing to promote diversity. I guess it's just whatever we can do to make people aware of the profession that may not have a chance to be aware of the profession, however that might happen, whether it's talking to high school kids about it, or getting involved if you're in a university setting in programs that might increase awareness of the profession. It's tough because it's something that a lot of people don't even think about. Or one thing I've noticed is that we may get students from underrepresented groups into programs, and they may graduate from those programs, but then they may drop out later. They don't get an internship, so they drop out, or they don't stay in the profession. And so I think we need to do a little bit more to help mentor those people all the way through. We may have 10% of males in undergraduate programs and internships, but that dwindles down to about 4 or 5% in the academy. So I think, I'm sort of rambling here, but I think we need to look at what we're doing, not only to create awareness at the beginning, but also make sure that people stay involved throughout their career. Are we selecting those people for committee roles and things like that?
I totally agree. And I know you would agree too, Marty, and know a lot more about this than I do, but the Academy's foundation in particular has tried to be responsive to some of the underrepresented groups in terms of support, grants, funding, and all kinds of diversity and inclusion initiatives to address this very important topic.
Mm-hmm. And there are certain scholarships that are earmarked by their donor for underrepresented groups, whether that be males or minorities or anything like that. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that those exist.
Right. Thank you. Kristi, any observations from your end in terms of how our profession can help with inclusion or diversity?
Well, I think this just discussion and increasing the awareness that it exists, and not just maintaining the status quo, I think are really important first steps that we can make. Lack of diversity in my area or in my applicant pool is something that's been a concern of mine for many years, and something I actually meet with human resources to discuss quite a bit. We tend to get the same type of applicant over and over again, and while they're wonderful candidates, it is challenging then to diversify our work pool when it's the same type of candidate over and over again. So, I think it's a lot of conversations. It's conversations with our university partners of what types of interns that we're getting. While we value, academic performance, absolutely, and I don't want to discount that at all, we also want to see a diverse pool of student coming to our site, because if we don't see that diversity in the interns, then we're not going to see that diversity in who we hire. We also work with our human resources to widen our search for applicants so that we're not just looking in the same area over and over, that we start to look in a broader area to maybe try to draw some candidates into our pool. But I definitely think more conversations about diversity, and whether it's improving diversity or lack of diversity, I think that awareness is a really great first step of advancing this, and also for folks in my type of position to not just settle for the status quo of, well, we do need to hire someone and I've got an applicant, even though it's the same one over and over again. I do need to work a little bit harder on maybe waiting, if I can, to broaden the applicant pool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Adam, observations in this area?
As far as, you know, promoting our profession even more than what we're doing, you know, I've been a minority since I've been, you know, I'm used to it, but you know, I always say I'm always part of the 3%. They said 3% what? 3% men, because, you know, but the statistics go up and down. I'm not always in proximity with as many dietetic students as probably as Kristi. However, I do represent 4 programs, so I'm getting more data as things come along, as far as male, you know, the data as far as the numbers are concerned. So still a puzzle, as Marty would say, because the academy, you know, we are promoting that. Actually, I'm taking a more active role within our state. I am now the chair of all the district presidents of the state of Florida. So that will be point taken in my notes in my pocket to be able to discuss that with the incoming president. And, you know, this is something that we can continue to plow through and push forward to increase the numbers and get more everybody involved.
Excellent, thank you. Patti, I'll end this little question with you if there's anything to add.
Oh, I would just say that as you, like what you're doing today, show that there's a lot of different things you can do as a dietitian. It's not just limited to maybe like in the past where you were a clinical or you were a management or you were this or that. Look at all the different things and different opportunities, as well as you continue to work on pushing the salaries. I think that's going to probably enhance the type of diversity that comes in.
I was speaking to a large group of educators a few months ago, and the question came to me, you know, what is the academy doing about diversity? And it's kind of one of those, there's an assumption that there's nothing going on again. And there is, you know, there's an entire diversity task force. There's a diversity strategic plan that a lot of people don't know about. And there maybe is part of the problem. A lot of people don't know about it. We probably have to get more people to care about that as well. It probably didn't go over as well as I had hoped, but I was honest with this group because I too am a passionate educator. But I firmly believe that diversity in a profession probably starts in the academic hallways. If we don't recruit diverse students, you can't really grow it afterwards. You can't have a profession that lacks diversity and then later on say, now let's have diversity. So I really think that part of the solution is recruiting students into our programs with excitement and inspiration about what this profession is. I was asked on another time to recite what the Academy's definition of diversity is. And I said, I will not do that on stage. And the reason is the definition is quite broad now. And it includes a lot of things that people have never thought of in terms of diversity or inclusivity. You know, handicap accessibility, gender identity, geographic location, health disparity are all forms of diversity. But when we have a narrow view of it, it's then going to have a negative outcome probably as well. So I think we are headed in the right direction. And I think you're all exactly right. Having the discussion is the very first step. You know, here we are on a panel with a majority of males. I don't know that I've ever seen that, to be honest, till people were commenting on that. So it is interesting. And I think we do have a very welcoming, compassionate, and accommodating profession, but we need to build on that, of course, too. So I think that's the majority of the questions. And so, Garrett, I think I'll turn towards the closing part of this. Unless any of our panelists have anything else to say about just advocating for these great credentials, the skill set that we're involved in, or anything else, I'll just look around to the panel and say, is there anything I forgot to ask you or that you would like to address?
Well, Kevin, if I may, just one little thing, and Adam mentioned it earlier. I think it's so important for our reputation that we always practice based on evidence, that we're always following the science, even if it might not align exactly with how we personally might want to eat. it is important, it's critical that we always practice based on evidence, and whatever we put on social media should be based on evidence as well.
Well said. Adam, Patti, Kristi, anything else?
The only thing I would add is just that the importance of building relationships. And I think we talked about it in terms of networking and things like that. But in some instances, you might be the only dietitian, or you might be the only dietitian in the group. And I think that I would just emphasize the importance of building relationships with other people. It helps you in your day-to-day work. It helps you in utilizing your resources, and it helps you in growing whatever it is you want to do. So I would just emphasize building relationships as a key important thing that I don't think I understood as a new graduate several years ago.
Excellent advice. And that, you know, that networking external to what we might think is the common circle of influence. So that's a good point. Adam, Patti, any final thoughts?
I would definitely agree with Kristi about relationships. I have found that my success is based on the relationships that I've made over the 28 years that I've been in RD. And I can't say no more. And being that person saying, hi, I am, is really that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. I used to try to inspire students with a strategy going to FNCE, because, you know, FNCE was this very daunting kind of scary event. I'm like, no, it's a lot of fun, a lot of fun. I used to practice 10-4 with them, which was 10 feet out, we make eye contact, and 4 feet out, we extend our hands to shake it. I don't know where handshaking is going to be in the next several months, so I'll have to come up with just 10 something else. I don't know what it will be. So. Patti, any concluding thoughts?
I would just say, as when you're young in your profession and you haven't really gotten to experience all the different kinds of opportunities, kind of like what Marty said, maybe he would have been a rock star food service director, you know, but, you know, it's how you can, well, he is, absolutely. But, you know, give it a try, you know, say yes to some of the different opportunities. When somebody, when your boss, like Kristi, asks you to do something, maybe, or asks you to volunteer, you know, say yes and see what that could turn into possibly. So I just think that's a way to get to feel out find your passion also.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I just have to say that it has been an absolute honor and privilege to sit in the same Zoom room with all of you. I already feel more inspired and positive about the future just listening to each of you. So again, Kansas Academy, thank you for this opportunity to serve as this virtual moderator for this virtual meeting. And I can't wait till we can all see each other in person again. But for now, thank you. Great, great, great advice. I really appreciate it. Garrett?
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to say how awesome it is to finally be able to sit in a room like this and see all of these names that I've seen floating around on these listservs and like DPGs, and like have them all in one room. I think that's so cool. I was talking to Becky before this meeting started, and I was like, Marty Yadrick, yeah, I saw him when he came and spoke a couple years ago. He's the first Shugart lecture series that I saw. So it is really cool, and it's a great opportunity to listen to all of this. And really, I just wanted to give you, I don't know if it'll be captured on the recording, but just a little bit of virtual applause for all of you guys coming in today and sharing your expertise. I know some of you are at work right now, and it's really hard to take the time to devote to things like this, but it's definitely something that our profession learns from and something that we benefit from. So I wanted to say thank you again. And then for anybody who is listening to this recording after the fact, I did just want to say, if you missed anything about any of these presenter or panelists' bios, we are posting those in the webinar description. And so I just wanted again to say thank you all for coming and speaking on this area. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and healthy. So.
Hi everyone, I am Bretta Ahlstrom. I am the Public Policy Coordinator for the Kansas Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And I just wanted to jump on here, first of all, to thank our panel speakers. I have such a deep appreciation for them coming on and sharing all their wisdom and guidance to us today. And I also want to just summarize the presentation a little bit, leave you guys with some highlights and some things to think about, and maybe even some ways that you can get involved in advocacy. So first and foremost, let's talk about what advocacy is. To me, what advocacy means is that you are promoting dietitians and dietitian services and you are promoting systems that help your clients and communities become healthier. So, how can you be a good advocate? Well, that is so simple. First and foremost, you can be an amazing dietitian. Being great at your job is the first way that you can be an amazing advocate for dietitians. Be a dietitian that makes others want to go seek out help of a dietitian. In addition to you being an amazing dietitian, it's also so important for us to hold our colleagues in high regard. We all have differing opinions on nutrition and different nutrition philosophies. So making sure that when we're talking about other dietitians, we're letting people know that there's a dietitian out there for everyone, no matter what they need. So keep that in mind as you're sharing with community members, stakeholders, and anyone else you're discussing dietetics with. Another super simple way that you can get involved in advocacy is amplifying the voices of dietitians on social media. KSAND makes it super simple for you. You can head over to the KSAND Facebook page or the KSAND Instagram and look at what they're sharing and share that on your feed as well. The more visibility we have, the more likely someone is going to reach out to a dietitian. So that can be super simple. You can also follow other dietitians on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and share the messages that they're sharing to really let the people that you're connected with know about what dietitians are saying today. So, second thing that's so simple. The third thing that you can do that has nothing to do with policy is become a content expert. So all of you are experts in your own right. So some people are working with diabetes, some people are working with renal. I work with kids with disabilities. Maybe you are an expert at reimbursement, or you're a rock star at public health. Whatever that is, lean into that and become a content expert. Let us know what your expertise is, so we have someone to reach out to when there is policy being shaped in that realm. The next thing that I think is so simple, in addition to being a content expert, is, share your voice. So maybe someone is looking to write a blog post, or they're looking for a guest writer, or they want an interview for a podcast. Share your voice. Keep in mind what you feel like you need to be compensated for and what you'll take for compensation, and get out there and share your voice to let people know that dietitians are here and we are the experts in nutrition. Unfortunately, our communities just don't know that. And in the world of social media, that gets even more muddled with all the people sharing nutrition information. So if you're not out there speaking your truth, people won't find us. Another way that building relationships can be so valuable for us as dietitians, specifically our advocacy team here at KSAND, is if you have a great relationship with your state representative or federal representatives, or if you know any lobbyists or anyone else who is working in the policy realm. So state representatives are typically fairly accessible to us as citizens. So if you know your state representative and maybe they live in your town, or you know someone who's connected to them, reach out to me, let me know, and that way we can kind of put that in our database, and when something comes up and maybe we need to reach out to them for help or even just guidance on what some policy is saying, how they feel like it's going to impact us, and then even the pros and cons to pushing a certain policy forward. If we have those connections, it's so much easier for us to do the advocacy that relates to policy for you. As I'm sure you realize now, there are so many other ways to become an advocate that has nothing to do with policy. I know that policy isn't for everyone. Some people find it boring. Some people think it's stressful. It can be really overwhelming to kind of enter that policy realm. And that's okay. We all should care about policy because it impacts our practice directly and how we serve our patients and what good we can put out there in the world. But we all have our specialties. So here are some other ways outside of policy that you can continue to be a great advocate. First, I think that advocating for higher pay and compensation is a great way, like depending on how you feel about how you're compensated, that's a great way to lay the foundation for other dietitians to come. So that's a way that you specifically can become an advocate in a way that benefits you and future generations of dietitians. You can also, in your own kind of sphere, create a workplace where dietitians are vital to the success of the operation. The more that you do that highlights your unique skills as a dietitian, and really where the organization, they really rely on your skills and your expertise, even when you have to move on, even if you have to, maybe you retire, maybe you move away, that lays the groundwork for them to fill that position with another dietitian. So still so important to make sure that you are being the best dietitian you can be and becoming like kind of that linchpin to the success of the organization. You can also bill insurance if you are working in a private practice. Billing insurance allows us to better advocate for better coverage for dietitian services with different insurance companies in Kansas. So the more dietitians that we have billing insurance, we can take that to insurance companies and we can say, look at all these dietitians that have patients that want to use their insurance to cover this specific condition, and we can work on improving that coverage for you. So that helps us, that helps you, and that helps your patients. And finally, you can continue to build relationships. This could even be just with your next door neighbor and talking about the nuances of nutrition and, maybe highlighting how it's so much more complex than just what's out there on the internet, but in a way that's easily digestible and people aren't turned off by that. So just think about how what you're putting out to the world reflects on dietitians, and think about what kind of dietitian you can be that are going to want to bring people into our profession, but also to us as clients. So now the question is, how can you support KSAND in our advocacy efforts? Maybe you are interested in getting involved in policy, even if you just want to dabble a little bit. Maybe you're not ready to go speak to any representatives or congressmen, but you can share your gifts with us, and that is so valuable to our success. So a few ways you can do that. Bring your expertise. We are always looking for content experts. Whenever legislation comes up around specific practice areas, I always love to reach out to our members that are actually participating in that practice area to get their feedback. What's hard for them? What stories can I take to share with our stakeholders like congressmen, senators, state representatives, and let them know exactly how this legislation is impacting their constituent dietitians and their constituent patients that we see. You can also always volunteer to write a letter for us. That is so helpful. We are also busy, but if you could take the time to write one letter of testimony or on a specific piece of legislation. Typically letters are about 1 page. They have a few stats in them and we cite our sources. No problem for a dietitian like you. So if that's something you're interested in, please let me know. I am so happy to reach out and utilize that, even if it's just you can commit to maybe 1 letter a year. It's also super helpful if you are ready to really embrace the advocacy spirit and you want to go to events and speak about dietetics and your role as a dietitian, or if you want to actually go speak with our stakeholders in Topeka or Washington, D.C. Those are all super valuable for us. We will prepare you and make sure you are ready for that. We'll support you in whatever way, or if there's something that's really important to you that you feel KSAND should be actively engaging in, let us know. We want to support you. We want to know what's important to you, and we want to be advocating for you and on behalf of you. And finally, if you are really gung-ho about getting into policy now, or just advocacy in general, I am open to having anyone on my team who wants to bring their passion forward and make a change for better health for Kansans and support the mission of KSAND. So if you're ready to take the next step, please send me an email, reach out to us, because we would love to have you on our advocacy team if that's something you're ready to do. We're very flexible. We are happy to have you for whatever time you have to give. Maybe that's just 1 hour a month. We can make some really awesome progress even with that small time commitment. Finally, I want to touch a little bit on diversity and inclusion in dietetics. So our panel did an excellent job. I hope you learned a little something about the Academy. I sure did when I listened to the panel discussion, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper because in this time that we're living in right now, this is so important, and KSAND is trying to become a lot more active in, focusing more on diversity and inclusion. So if this is something that's important to you, bring your ideas forward. Diversity and inclusion spans all of dietetics. It's not just limited to advocacy, but we do have some opportunities to really elevate the voices of marginalized communities here too. As dietitians, we're always looking for a seat at the table so that we can share what's going to help our profession and what's going to help our patients the best. People of marginalized communities need that seat at the table as well. If they are not part of our community as dietitians, then it's really hard for us to advocate for anti-discriminatory policy. And these things are really, really important and getting more important every single day. So the time is now to step up and take action. So if you have ideas on how we can better promote diversity and inclusion or support you in cultural competence to better help you better understand the populations that you serve, maybe that's culture or skin color or sexuality, gender, even body size. If that's you and you're looking for cultural competence, activities, let us know what you need so we can support you the best. And if you have any opportunities that you would like to share, please send those out to us or the listserv so that way we can all be involved in improving diversity and inclusion, not only here at KSAND, but in the whole field of dietetics as well. So to wrap it all up, if there's something that you are passionate about, there is a place for you on our advocacy team. Maybe you want to have a really small role in advocacy, maybe you want a bigger role in advocacy, but we're a very small group and it is hard for us to touch all policy areas that impact dietitians. We do our best, but if there's something that you are motivated to take action in, bring that to us because we would love to support you and help you find resources in any way that we can. With that being said, please reach out to me if you guys have any questions. And I want to thank our panel members one more time. They were amazing. You guys have a great day.